The decision by Walmart CEO Doug McMillon to announce the company's departure from the U.S. just changed everything. For decades, Walmart has been a cornerstone of American consumer culture, a symbol of affordability and supply chain mastery. However, the tides shifted dramatically with President Donald Trump's inauguration and his administration's aggressive economic policies, including sweeping tariffs on key global trade partners. These policies created a volatile economic climate, forcing Walmart, once a beneficiary of open markets, to struggle in the very country that nurtured its rise. The Trump administration's tariffs, designed to reassert American dominance in international trade, impacted many sectors like a wrecking ball. Walmart, which relies heavily on global supply chains to maintain its low prices, felt the immediate and severe impact as the cost of imported goods from China, Mexico, Canada, and the EU began to rise. Store shelves, once filled with affordable options, now reflected the burden of these trade restrictions, affecting not only electronics and apparel, but also food, household goods, and health supplies, all carrying inflated prices. Walmart's business model, rooted in logistical precision and cost control, faced distortion from tariffs. The company had to make a crucial choice: either pass rising costs onto consumers and risk alienating its customer base, or seek operational alternatives outside the hostile U.S. economic landscape. McMillon and his leadership team opted for the latter, a calculated move to relocate Walmart's corporate base abroad and re-establish operations in a more trade-friendly jurisdiction, a decision they deemed necessary. For the company's survival in an increasingly protectionist world under the Trump administration, the decision came amid a global context where America's trading partners retaliated with their own tariffs. Chinese electronics, European dairy products, Mexican agricultural goods, and Canadian timber became significantly more expensive for American businesses. This tit-for-tat escalation created economic friction, suffocating businesses reliant on international input and output. Walmart, a global behemoth, was not immune. Its reliance on foreign suppliers meant it bore the brunt of the trade war. Imported goods became costly, and American-made products were now too expensive for global markets. Doug McMillon's announcement to move Walmart's central operations abroad sent shockwaves through Wall Street, shaking the cultural foundation of corporate America. This was not a small firm seeking tax benefits. Walmart, entwined with American identity, declared that the economic environment had become untenable. The cost of doing business in the U.S. under such policies had surpassed the benefits, with profound implications for other U.S.-based multinationals, likely emboldening CEOs to consider similar relocations. Public reaction was mixed, but intense in economically fragile towns where Walmart was the primary employer. News of the departure sparked concern as jobs were on the line, not just at corporate offices, but also in distribution centers, transportation hubs, and local stores. These communities had grown around Walmart's presence, and the company's withdrawal introduced an economic vacuum that could destabilize local economies and disrupt regional supply chains. Walmart had become vital to the economic anatomy of Middle America, and financial analysts quickly assessed the implications of this landmark move. The immediate expectation was that Walmart's withdrawal would raise consumer prices, as Walmart's exit would allow competitors to increase margins. The company's departure from U.S. manufacturing complicated matters. Walmart had invested in localized sourcing to appeal to consumers preferring made-in-America goods, but rising domestic costs from retaliatory tariffs made these initiatives unsustainable. Walmart's global pivot showed that even deeply embedded companies couldn't shield themselves from trade wars. This shift cast a shadow over the retail industry. Competitors that followed Walmart's model now faced the need for an overhaul. With Walmart leaving the market, pricing dynamics would be shaped more by political policies than consumer demand. Walmart's decision may have been the first domino to fall, signaling a broader reckoning for U.S. businesses reliant on stable international trade in an increasingly inward-looking America. Walmart's exit symbolized a critique of the new trade philosophy. For decades, the U.S. promoted free market capitalism and open trade, relying on predictable economic relations with allies. However, escalating tariffs have rendered these assumptions obsolete. Walmart's move abroad resonated in the global business community. Economic nationalism may support political goals, but jeopardizes corporate viability. The decision raised concerns among international governments that saw Walmart as a partner and employer, presenting both opportunities for increased investment and risks due to the unpredictable nature of U.S. policy. Walmart was courted with promises of trade stability, infrastructure support, and tax incentives, intensifying the race to accommodate one of the world's largest corporations. Economists warned that Walmart's departure could undermine the rationale for tariff-heavy policies, initially aimed at protecting American jobs and reviving domestic manufacturing. The outcome was the opposite: capital flight, job erosion in key regions, and rising prices for everyday goods. Walmart's exit may exemplify policy miscalculations, showing that isolationist economics rarely yield local prosperity. Walmart's internal transformation was significant, with plans to re-establish headquarters abroad. The company restructured its framework, legal teams navigated complex regulations, and logistics managers optimized new supply routes. Marketing executives adjusted narratives to reflect a global ethos, driving a sense of urgency and renewal. This was not a retreat, but a rebirth into a global enterprise, free from the unpredictability of American trade policy. Walmart's pivot reignited debates over corporate loyalty. Critics accused it of abandoning the country that enabled its rise, prioritizing profit over patriotism. Supporters argued that Walmart was reacting to an untenable situation created by governmental overreach, asserting that remaining in the U.S. under economic constraints would have been irresponsible. For Doug McMillon, the decision was about safeguarding the future of the company's global operations, employees, and consumers. Walmart's exit had broader societal implications, prompting universities to incorporate the move into economics curricula as a parable of globalization's fragility. Political commentators debated the ethics of using trade policy as a tool, forcing lawmakers to confront unintended consequences. What began as a promise to protect American jobs became a reality where Walmart no longer viewed the U.S. as a viable home. Labor unions, historically critical of Walmart's practices, now saw its departure as a warning sign that tariffs meant to protect domestic industries were accelerating decline. Workers lost leverage not from offshoring, but from trade policies making it too costly to operate. This reframed labor narrative complicated public views on globalization, protectionism, and the future of work. Within Walmart, employee morale mixed apprehension and ambition. Those who remained were promised new opportunities and relocation packages, while those left behind felt abandoned. Local officials struggled to replace Walmart's economic anchor with effective development initiatives. Financial markets reacted immediately, with Walmart's shares experiencing volatility as investors assessed the implications of this historic move. However, as details of the realignment surfaced, confidence returned. Analysts observed that freed from U.S. trade constraints, Walmart could optimize its global supply chain, secure better pricing, and access emerging markets without retaliatory tariffs. This realignment might not only preserve, but also expand Walmart's dominance, setting a precedent that no company could endure prolonged exposure to distorted economic policies. If the largest U.S. retailer couldn't thrive under Trump-era tariffs, who could? For policymakers, the choice between economic nationalism and global viability was no longer theoretical. Walmart's move abroad marked a crucial point in the ongoing globalization versus protectionism debate, reshaping the role of government and corporate strategy and the resilience of international markets. As Walmart sought to expand beyond American borders, the relocation process required monumental changes, including re-engineering infrastructure and navigating complex legal frameworks. This involved countless contracts with suppliers, partners, and governmental agencies. Notably, Walmart's departure was not due to scandal or financial collapse, but was a strategic response to economic policy. Internally, discussions likely focused on risk modeling and long-term projections, that showed staying in the U.S. under existing tariffs would either raise costs for customers or shrink profit margins, threatening Walmart's low-cost strategy. Relocation was a way to protect Walmart's global ambitions and market position. Countries vying to host Walmart's new headquarters offered different advantages. Singapore provided logistical superiority and regulatory transparency. Ireland offered tax incentives and a favorable legal system, while the UAE showcased its strategic location and modern infrastructure. The selection process for these destinations became a secretive operation, with nations making overtures to secure Walmart's business. Governments that once admired Walmart now courted it with open arms. Once a destination was selected, Walmart began a major transition. Corporate departments were reassigned, and thousands prepared to shift their lives for the new location. This was more than a business move. It brought in talent, expertise, and economic momentum. Real estate development surged, with local contractors hired to build campuses, distribution centers, and housing for expatriates. New jobs emerged directly through Walmart and indirectly via a growing ecosystem of suppliers and service providers. Walmart also had to reconfigure its global supply chain, shifting from the U.S. network to international ports. This redirection involved new deals, negotiating customs procedures, and building regional distribution centers to avoid tariffs. The shift allowed Walmart to capitalize on regional free trade agreements previously underutilized due to its U.S.-centric model. The company prioritized supplier hubs in Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, and Latin America, creating a more agile procurement system. Technology played a crucial role in this relocation. Walmart's proprietary systems in inventory management, predictive analytics, and logistics were rapidly adapted for global operations. Cloud-based infrastructure facilitated the transition, ensuring continuity across time zones. Engineers updated applications to reflect new tax codes and regulatory environments. In months, Walmart transformed a U.S.-anchored network into a globally responsive entity. The departure sparked reflection among the U.S. Consumers had taken Walmart's presence for granted. It was more than just a store. It shaped how Americans shopped, budgeted, and lived. The loss of Walmart represented a collapse of a daily ritual for millions. For generations, weekend trips to Walmart were as routine as attending church or school. Its departure marked a break in the American social fabric, especially in suburban and rural areas with limited choices. Walmart's exit also disrupted supplier dynamics in the U.S. Thousands of small and mid-sized manufacturers tailored their operations to meet Walmart's standards, investing in machinery and compliance systems. Without Walmart, many suppliers lost their primary buyer, resulting in layoffs and closures. Some struggled to pivot to smaller retailers, international buyers, or direct-to-consumer models with mixed success. Walmart's exit prompted a cultural reckoning. Its ethos of everyday low prices had set an expectation that convenience, abundance, and affordability could coexist. With its departure, prices at competing stores rose, choices diminished, and the idea of a one-stop shop became less attainable, raising questions about the sustainability of the American consumer lifestyle. The political implications were significant. Legislators grappled with the fallout, with some defending tariffs as necessary for sovereignty, while others, from states hardest hit, called for trade policy reviews. Lobbying groups emerged, advocating for either tariff reversals or incentives for replacement employers. Town halls shifted from healthcare discussions to urgent talks on job recovery and economic realignment. Academic institutions rushed to study the economic impact. Data quantified the ripple effects across sectors. Business schools used Walmart's decision as an example of macroeconomic disruption, while sociologists examined community adaptations after losing access to the retail giant. Walmart's move became a multidisciplinary case study on how a company's strategy can reveal the unintended consequences of national policy decisions globally. The decision reignited debates about multinationals' futures, highlighting the conflict between national loyalty and global competitiveness. It shattered illusions, reinforcing that companies, especially those with international ambitions, must prioritize flexibility over legacy. National identity, once a corporate badge of honor, became a secondary concern in a volatile geopolitical landscape. In response, the international business community acted quickly. CEOs held private summits to evaluate their exposure to protectionist policies, and strategy consultants received inquiries about exit models, alternative headquarters, and regulatory risks. Legal teams updated risk clauses, while insurance firms saw increased demand for political risk coverage. Walmart had catalyzed a corporate awakening, a realization that static operations were no longer viable in a politically changing world. Financial institutions had to adapt as well. Major U.S. banks that previously supported Walmart's operations reevaluated relationships as the company moved abroad, sometimes forging ties with international banks better suited to its new realities. U.S. institutions reassessed exposure to political risk and diversified portfolios. Employees in international markets responded to Walmart's decision with a mix of excitement and caution, validating their market's importance as investments flowed into regional offices and training centers. Autonomy was granted to country managers who previously funneled major decisions through U.S. headquarters. Local hiring surged, and Walmart's promise to integrate local cultures earned it goodwill globally. However, this pressured foreign governments to provide the necessary infrastructure and regulatory support for Walmart's scale. Media coverage of Walmart's exit ignited debate, with business outlets analyzing structural shifts in global capitalism and political programs dissecting the roots of Trump's trade war. Walmart's story became a litmus test for broader questions. Can a modern economy function without international cooperation? Is economic nationalism a viable long-term strategy? Should governments intervene to retain major corporations or let market forces dictate outcomes? Walmart's competitors sought to capitalize on this moment, with big-box retailers like Target, Kroger, and Costco gaining temporary foot traffic but struggling to match Walmart's pricing. E-commerce platforms like Amazon saw a boost but faced tariff-related cost pressures on imports. Niche retailers attempted to fill product gaps but couldn't replicate the all-in-one convenience that made Walmart dominant. Customer behavior became erratic, loyalty waned, and price sensitivity soared, leading to a volatile retail ecosystem. As Walmart's new international headquarters opened, the atmosphere was celebratory yet strategic. Ribbon-cutting ceremonies included dignitaries, corporate leaders, and international press. The new campus architecture reflected a departure from conservative American roots, featuring sleek, tech-integrated spaces and an emphasis on sustainability with solar panels and green roofs, showcasing Walmart's commitment to long-term global leadership. Walmart's international expansion strategy also underwent a renaissance, freed from tariff bottlenecks, enabling an accelerated push into underserved markets with localized offerings and region-specific pricing. Partnerships became Walmart's new modus operandi as it increased investment in digital infrastructure, enabling mobile-first shopping in emerging markets. It partnered with local fintech firms for inclusive payment systems and worked with regional agricultural cooperatives to source fresh food directly, ensuring affordability without relying on imports. Culturally, Walmart began rebranding itself, shifting from American-centric values to a universal message focused on inclusivity, sustainability, and global access. Marketing campaigns highlighted stories from families globally benefiting from Walmart's presence, symbolizing adaptability despite U.S. criticism over the loss of a homegrown icon. Walmart's exit from the U.S., initially shocking, reflected the broader modern economy, where capital, labor, and innovation transcend borders. Global corporations, like Walmart, continually evolve to survive, with geography becoming fluid and identity dynamic. Once a symbol of American retail, Walmart transformed, mirroring the new rules of global commerce that require motion and perspective. Following Walmart's departure from the United States, a new phase emerged, defined by structural recalibration on a global scale. The company's evolution into an international entity reshaped governance, partnerships, and macroeconomic trends. As the world's largest retailer recalibrated its role, It demonstrated a capacity for reinvention that extended beyond commerce into soft power and economic influence, necessitating a new governance structure suited for its global operations. The US-centric board of Walmart expanded to include regional specialists from Asia, Europe, Latin America, and Africa. These additions provided insights on navigating regulations, handling consumer expectations, and managing currency fluctuations. Board meetings became more complex, multilingual, and globally attuned, reflecting regional cycles and geopolitical shifts rather than US quarterly expectations. Walmart's compliance structure was reworked. The previous US system was replaced with frameworks tailored to each jurisdiction. Legal teams, segmented by region and embedded in country-specific offices, navigated local customs laws, environmental mandates, and labor rights. This decentralization reduced Walmart's risk and allowed for nimble operations within local ecosystems. Financial structuring also evolved, with the tax base relocated. Walmart leveraged international treaties and tax structures that allowed for reinvestment in high-growth regions without the costs of repatriation. Profits from markets like India and Brazil could now fund infrastructure projects in Africa or digital initiatives in Southeast Asia. Financial agility defined Walmart's next era, with capital no longer limited by borders and reinvestment driven by opportunity. Internally, Walmart redefined global supplier relations. No longer subject to US restrictions, the company established supplier clusters near major trade hubs such as the Suez Canal, the Port of Rotterdam, and ports in Singapore and Buenos Aires. These clusters were developed with host governments in designated economic zones, offering favorable regulations and low operating costs, and operated semi-independently, connected through Walmart's upgraded global logistics. Walmart optimized its network with AI-driven demand forecasting, real-time cargo tracking, and dynamic inventory rerouting in supplier clusters. They initiated programs to elevate small and mid-sized vendors by establishing training for packaging standards, compliance protocols, and data integration techniques necessary for the global supply chain. In countries like Vietnam, Kenya, and Colombia, Walmart became a catalyst for industrial modernization, partnering with governments to co-develop infrastructure such as power grids, roads, and sanitation to uplift entire economic regions. If you like this video, please give it a like, subscribe, and share your thoughts on Walmart's departure from the US after Trump's tariff policies. Thank you for watching.